Today we're installing new flooring as we start our family room renovation. We've had enough of this blue carpet that even this plywood looks better. Let's get to work. After doing a lot of research, we decided to install engineered hardwood flooring, and in today's video we'll be discussing why we chose it over other flooring options like solid hardwood and luxury vinyl plank. In the first episode of this series, we showed you our design for the new space and got started with demolition. We tore out all of the carpet, padding, and old window coverings, and we're going to start this episode by preparing the subfloor, which you'll need to do regardless of which flooring option you end up choosing. The key is that you want to make sure your subfloor is perfectly flat. Since this subfloor was installed in the 80s, they used nails rather than screws. So the first thing we did was find any nails that were proud of the surface using a floor scraper and hit them back down with a hammer or nail punch if necessary. Some nails were still very loose even after hitting them back into position, and other areas still had some squeaks, so we used GRK screws to fasten those areas down. It's also very common to have the butt joints of your subfloor be unlevel with the rest of the floor, so I originally took out my orbital sander with a 40 grit pad to level that area out, but it was going pretty slow, so then I broke out my electric hand planer, which made light work of those areas and made the floor nice and level. So now that the subfloor is fully prepared, we can go ahead and start laying our flooring. However, there is one issue over here by the patio doors. If I take this level here and lay it on the floor, you can see that there's about a 1-inch gap over there because the whole floor just dips down. It's because these patio doors basically were way too heavy and they've over time dipped the floor. So we were originally going to install the new flooring in this orientation running this way, but that would cause a lot of problems with this slump, and we really can't address it until the new doors are installed. So we've made the decision actually to run the floor in this direction, and we're gonna start in that corner, work our way all the way over, pretty much getting about 90% of the square footage of the room, stop about here, wait for the new doors to be installed in about a month or so. Then once those are installed, the subfloor is fixed, we can go ahead and finish off the floor. So let's get to it. But before we start installing the floor, let's discuss how we chose it. There are many flooring options out there, but the three main ones that we were considering were solid hardwood, engineered hardwood, and luxury vinyl plank or LVP. Now to be clear, I have personally installed each of these types of flooring and each has their own pros and cons, but we ended up going with engineered hardwood, so let's discuss why. I will break down our decision-making process into 5 categories: material price, install price, look and feel, durability, and maintenance. For material price, solid hardwood is the highest, ranging from $7 to $15 a square foot, while engineered hardwood is roughly equal but ever so slightly less at $5 to $12 a square foot. And the big winner is LVP, coming in at only $2 to $7 per square foot on average. Now there is a big difference in terms of the labor install price as well as how easy it is if you want to do it yourself. Solid hardwood is probably one of the highest at $5 to $10 a square foot, and it's usually the hardest because you have to nail down each individual board. Engineered hardwood comes at a similar price point of $3 to $10 a square foot, but there are floating options where you can just use a click and lock system, and it's pretty easy to install if you want to do it DIY. And then the easiest and least expensive option is LVP, ranging from $1 to $5 a square foot, and pretty much all of those are click and lock systems. Now when it comes to look and feel, you can't get much better than the real wood of solid hardwood. The nice option with engineered hardwood is you still get that look, but you can also go with wide plank options. And LVP is made of plastic but has the look of real wood, so I would rank that lowest on this scale. Now when it comes to water resistance, solid hardwood is water resistant, but it is prone to buckling because it is all made of wood. Now I would say engineered hardwood is more water resistant because it's made out of a core of plastic or plywood and therefore more stable. And when it comes to LVP, pretty much all the options are waterproof. And the last category is maintenance. Solid hardwood you can refinish up to 4 or even more times because it's all made of real wood. Now engineered hardwood, depending on your wear layer, can be refinished maybe 1 to 2 times. In LVP, you cannot refinish it whatsoever. So in our particular case, we eliminated LVP as an option because we wanted to match the real look of wood, as we have a ton of hardwood in the rest of our home that we just refinished. So then it was between solid and engineered hardwood, and we opted for engineered hardwood due to the lower cost point as well as the easier installation process. So now that we have our flooring picked out, let's go ahead and start the install. So I just completed the first 4 rows of flooring. This is always the hardest step in the process because there's no weight on it yet and things are constantly moving around and you have to get it perfectly in a straight line. That way all the seams and all the gaps line up perfectly. So now that I have this completed, we can go ahead and take all of our extra flooring over here, move it on top of these boards here, and then these will be nicely weighted down and stay in place as we do the rest of the flooring. The only thing I had to do in terms of cutting is to cut around this vent, and that's pretty much the rest of the room. Is there's not anything else to cut around. around, so it should fly by pretty quickly. And then we're also maintaining about a 1/4 to 1/2 inch gap around the perimeter for expansion and contraction. Let's get to it. So now let's discuss how to actually install this floor piece by piece. As you start a new row, you're going to want to make sure that your board is a minimum of 6 inches, but it can be as long as you want. In our case, our maximum board length was 4 feet. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm maintaining a gap of about a 1/4 inch up against the drywall, and this gap will eventually be covered up by our baseboard. Similar to LVP, this engineered wood flooring is installed using a click and lock system. And as you can see here, you click the long edge in by going in at an angle and slowly compressing it down toward the subfloor. You get the short side in first by hammering it down with a mallet, and then using a tapping block, you can go down the length of the board and tap it into place to make sure that the gap between this new row and the previous row is completely closed. We are in love with this flooring, but we did go with a budget option coming in at just over $4 a square foot, and at that price point there are a few drawbacks. One of those being the length of the boards. For this particular wood, it only comes in a maximum of 4 feet in length, and a lot of the boards are even shorter, coming in at just over 1 or 2 feet long. Other options have boards that are over 6 feet, and they all come at that maximum length. Now this can be taken as a positive, but some view it as a drawback, and that is the variation in wood grain and color of each piece. Now we did want a little bit more of a consistent looking floor, so buying this option we knew that it would be a bit of an issue, so the way that we resolved that is by buying a few extra boxes, and we were extremely picky with which boards went where. For boards that we weren't a huge fan of, we made sure to put those underneath the couch or underneath the future rug so that they wouldn't really be seen all that often. And we decided to stop around this row, that way the installers of the new patio doors had plenty of room to work. Now these new patio doors weren't cheap, and I would have loved to have salvaged the current patio doors, however they were too far gone at this point. As you can see, the exterior of the doors were starting to rot away and the paint was peeling, and from the inside you can see that the subfloor was also starting to rot away as they were letting water in because they never fully opened or closed. So now let's take a look back at what the doors looked like when we first bought the house, when we took off all of the grids and window coverings, and now what the new doors look like. We absolutely loved the doors and we wanted to get my parents' honest reaction, so here's what they had to say the first time they saw them.
Oh my god! Oh my god! I was like, your dad's gonna roll this window.
I just caught the tail end, and actually I thought, you know what, it's just tape. But I was looking forward to seeing it.
I think it's safe to say that my mom's a pretty big fan of the new doors. And now we can finally finish off this floor. Let's get to work. Now I did misspeak earlier. I thought I was out of the woods and not having to make any more complex cuts, but I did have this HVAC vent that I had to cut around, but luckily it was all in one board, so I just used my drill to drill out the corners and jigsaw to cut out the rectangle. And as you can see, we went with a 2x3 grid style for the doors. If you saw episode 1, you knew that we were also considering a 2x2 style, and we really liked that style, but we thought it was a little bit too modern for this home's aesthetic. Therefore, we went with the 2x3, which we are in love with. And also, I just wanted to note that once the old sliding doors were removed, the installer for the new sliding doors was able to get access to underneath that subfloor and raise it up a bit so it was level with the rest of the floor.
All right, this is it, the last piece. We're done with the floor.
And stay tuned for next week because we're going to be removing all of this wallpaper. Well, kinda. It doesn't go exactly according to plan, but you'll have to subscribe to see how that one turns out. And if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, we'd really appreciate it if you could give it a like, as it really helps out the channel, and leave any questions you have down in the comments as we'd be happy to answer them. And here's me taking a stroll around the room so you can see how the floors look in the space, and honestly they don't look too great with all that busy wallpaper on all the walls, but that's about to change, so stay tuned. And as always, thanks for watching and happy building. See you next time.